So it's just gone 6:10 here on day 2 of the Esri Southern Africa User Conference. I'm absolutely delighted to be with Bruce Burgess. Bruce has travelled in, like myself, from Cape Town, and he's here representing IRL Consulting, and tomorrow he'll be giving a presentation to the conference. So Bruce, first things first, thank you so much for being here. Welcome. Tell us a bit about what IRL Consulting is into, and then let's move into what people can expect to hear from you tomorrow.
Cool. So we specialize in consumer location data. So really it's about the concept of saying we're in the second wave of digital transformation, which is we live in a world where the availability of micro-location data about where people visit, how they visit those places, where they come from, demographics and consumption expenditure behaviors, are now all available at scale in quite a complex environment. But what's happening that's so exciting is that the infrastructure to make sense of those environments is also changing exponentially at the same time. So while the data sets are getting bigger and more complex, at the same time, our tools to do the massive compute that you need to deal with that, and then analyze the data that comes out of those, are advancing rapidly. So you have the rise of things like machine learning. Cloud compute is such a game changer. Billions and billions of events we can now process in seconds rather than hours and days. Excuse me. And then finally, I think the rise of AI is going to unleash our consultants who are trying to solve the place-based problems that organizations have. I think it's going to supercharge their ability to actually come up with smart and novel ideas to create the outcomes that organizations are looking for, rather than spending all of their time on data prep, which is where the industry is stuck.
And is that where your company IRL Consulting comes in? Is that what you're busy with, and what's the growth curve of the company been to get you to this point?
Sure. So we started with 3 co-founders.
Right.
Just round about the time that COVID hit, and yeah, we've been lucky enough to find the right solutions. So we started with a combination of mobility data, which is data aggregated out of hundreds of thousands of apps. So where do mobile phones move around the country, move around the landscape or the world? And then a bunch of data about up-to-date demographic data for where do people live, and which suburbs do they live in, and then how much do the residents of those places spend on a whole bunch of different consumption categories. And then we've come up with novel ways to interpret those data sets. So if you think about it, your best demographic data set, it's all tied to where people live, not where they move and where they shop. So by unleashing that, we can start to understand and help our clients to understand where to open a store, where to change the range that store is selling, what getting passenger rail in South Africa up and running again might do to the way that people live in the cities in South Africa, and what that might do to access.
This morning we saw Esri's Danny Spillman give a masterclass, and one of the examples that he used was around the Starbucks in Manhattan.
Yeah.
and the sort of LSM details, the how many people are going in, when's the busy times, what's the numbers of foot traffic. Was that where you went, I've seen that movie before, or no, this is exactly what we're talking about?
So all of the variables that they spoke to, which is, so from my point of interest, how far away is the nearest category store that I'm looking for? What's the visitation trends to that? What is the cross? So where else do those people go? What's the expenditure within the area, and maybe what are the demographics? That's the data that we've been giving to our clients for the last couple of years already. I think the format was super interesting because instead of clicking your mouse to get those answers, you were just using natural language to access that information. And what was so fantastic is that and that's great about this conference, is that I managed to have a conversation with him afterwards, and what we were speaking about was those data points on their own don't mean anything, because it's just, what do they say? Like, what does $1.3 million of expenditure on coffee mean? Is that a lot? It sounds like a lot, but is that a lot maybe in comparison to one block further down the street? So without the context, you can't actually get to the action. And so while the AI is very useful in getting the what does it say out in a succinct and a much more human natural way, what it doesn't answer reliably yet is, what does that mean? And what is the opportunity here for the sponsor of the project? And that's where the human layer comes in.
For anybody from our American visitors or people watching this, you all drink too much coffee. That's certainly what I took from this morning's presentation. Tell me, Bruce, about your presentation tomorrow. What can people expect? Don't go into the details. Keep that for tomorrow. But what's the outline of your approach, and what the call to action that you're going to be giving?
Sure. So I think one of the philosophies of our organization is that there's no single point of truth. So show me a data set and I'll show you its limitations. And so what we do is we stack data sets next to each other, and we ask the same questions of those independent data sets, and then see where all of those independent answers are pointing us towards, because that's somewhere in between those answers is probably, if there's something something like an objective truth, that's where it'll be. And so really my presentation tomorrow focuses on a use case where we bring together multiple different data sets like we've spoken about, including the mobility and the availability of stores, etc., demographics, consumption, expenditure, and even bank card swipe data.
Oh, okay. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Level of granularity, right?
Yeah, and then we bring that data together to go and discover suburbs in South Africa that are underserved from an online fast food delivery point of view. So where can we find suburbs where there should be significantly more spend on fast food delivery? And we go and discover some of those in real time, which is really cool.
I can't let you go before answering the question, which obviously a lot of what you've described would fit a very strong corporate model, and your clients are probably corporates in many respects. How can you transfer that into a deeper dive into sort of community needs and social modeling that can show us, for example, where clinics are needed, where schools are deficient in terms of numbers? We know these are challenges. Can what you're doing assist in that? Yes, a yes or no is fine.
Certainly, and we have.
Brilliant.
So previously we've shown an NGO where there's a community that in the NGO's 27-year history they'd never identified them, and so never delivered the health services that they offer to that community. So there's a community out there that now has access to HIV testing that previously didn't have that. I think another great study is one where we looked at some urban townships within South Africa, and we looked at the way that the residents of those townships travel and shop to understand how much harder is it for the residents of an urban township to access economic opportunity. So how much further do they travel on a daily basis? How does travel on a Friday compare to travel on a Tuesday or a Monday? And then most importantly is do they have access to the same economic opportunities, even if it's just from a choice point of view? So how much more choice does a resident of Sandton have for grocery stores versus the resident of Khayelitsha, for example?
Bruce, all the best with your presentation tomorrow.
Thank you
all
very
the best
much.
to IRL Consulting. And
Thank
as
you.
always, thanks so much for spending time. Most importantly, enjoy your time here, and
Thank you.
hopefully
Yeah,
you
it's been
get
great.
to take away a lot. But
yeah.
good luck to you. Thanks a
Cool.
lot, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.